मिरुदि संस्फुरदात्मतत्त्वम् सच्चित् सुखं परमहं सगतिं तुरीयम् यत् स्वप्नजागर सुषुप्तमवेति नित्यम् तद्ब्रह्म निष्कलमहं न च भूतसङ्गः तपोभिक्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिनां मुमुक्षोऽनामपेक्षोऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते. Welcome everybody. So the topic is part 2, Road of Evolution, and this topic will keep on part 2 and 3 until we reach the last state. So I'll just explain it to you. As a person is extroverted by nature, understanding that it is the happiness and sadness arising out of the sense contacts and the sense relationships contacts which make me happy or sad. The more the person thinks about it, the more the person becomes unpleasant and miserable in life. So an intelligent people or person thinks that, okay, I need to understand what life is per se. They start this inward journey. And how do you go through the spiritual discipline? I'm just explaining the whole chart here. We go through the 3 disciplines of karma, bhakti, and jnana. Karma, selfless actions, which you do for a higher cause. Bhakti, an attitude of the mind to see divinity in every aspect of life. Purity of the mind, that is bhakti, impassioned passion. Jnana, the right knowledge of differentiating between what is unreal, the world that is temporary, transitory, and what is the reality. Just that kind of differentiation between the terrestrial and the transcendental is called jnana. When you go through all these 3 aspects of karma, physical body, bhakti, your purification of mind, and jnana, the decision-making ability of the intellect, you reach a state of uparati. Uparati is where you are basically loving solitude. You don't require the world anymore to enhance your happiness. Neither your sadness or whatever is dependent on the world. In fact, you are never sad. So uparati is just a general withdrawal from the world. You move the next, when you go through that state, you come to a next state called dharana. Dharana is now, since the vasanas, the desires have reduced itself so much, you are specifically doing only a little bit of activities in the world to keep you afloat, sustain yourself. So dharana is then whatever activities you are doing, your general concentration in those activities become brilliant. I'll explain to you eventually. So this becomes dharana, and the vasanas go reduce more, the desires reduces more, and you reach a state of dhyana, meditation. When you meditate on the supreme reality and nothing else in the world matters to you anymore, then you jump through that state of meditation and reach the ultimate state of samadhi. Sama, equanimous, dhi, intellect. Your intellect, your personality itself, which is guided by the intellect, becomes completely equanimous to whatever is happening around you. Nothing in the world can disturb you after that, once you reach the state of samadhi. So this is the explanation of the chart. Last class, I remember we did karma yoga, selfless activities. We had given a lot of examples of Sindhutai Sapkal. So any activity which you are doing selflessly by nature, but remember, it should be aligned to what we call is your swadharma. When we use the term swadharma, is my nature, What is the field of activity which you are comfortable with? So we have got a lot of cases where there is a person who's very much interested in Vedanta, and the person says, sir, I would also like to join Vedanta and start teaching. But he was a businessman. So we told him that, listen, you continue with your business, you are good at it, and eventually you will help people. So Vedanta is not a subject you preach. Vedanta is a subject which creeps into your system, it creeps into your personality and your day-to-day living. He didn't agree to it, and he went for preaching, and then it became a disaster because it didn't come naturally to him. And being a businessman, the outlook was always focused on the result. This is what happens. Just because somebody is doing good to the world in their field of activity need not be necessarily good for me. Acharya Vinoba Bhave brilliantly put it. He said that if the fish comes to know that milk is a superior medium than water, it will not swim in milk. It will still prefer water. Do what you are comfortable with. That's what it is. Swadharma is, what is my field of activity? Focus on that, and then pour all the attitude of working in selfless way in that field of activity. No field of activity is higher or lower. No profession is higher or lower. It is the attitude you build and go through in the profession. This is Karma Yoga. We did it last time. So Dharma, when you do systematically, so with the physical body, have the physical body come to a shape where it is fit enough to do the activities. Till 100 years minimum, you should be fit. There is this lady, I don't know her name. She was 98. So in the YouTube, if you find 98-year-old lady, and she's doing yoga, Indian lady, South Indian, I think so. And she was doing yoga, Kapal Bhati and Naukasana and all very well. And somebody asked her, so how do you feel? So her only goal was, I decided long time back that when I get old, I don't want to ask anybody to physically help me. My hands and legs should work properly even at a ripe old age. See, even that itself is a goal. So keep yourself fit, your physical body, so that whatever you need to do or want to do in the world can be achieved. This is Karma Yoga, simply put. Next, we move on to Bhakti Yoga. However much we discuss on Bhakti Yoga, it becomes very difficult because it's difficult to make an emotion understand. Bhakti Yoga is an emotion. So in chapter 12, Lord Krishna gives 35 qualities of a Bhakta. Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitre karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankaraha samadukha sukha shami. All these, the 35 qualities are there. And first quality, he puts it as Adveshta sarvabhutanam. No hatred towards any being. Hate is one of the most disgusting words, a bad word actually, because when you say I hate, then your life is revolving around that hate only. So the life can be centered in either love or hate. If it is centered in love, you have understood bhakti. Because whatever you do, it springs out of the center of love. If it is hatred, everything you do will be in a very bad way. I hate that person. I hate. So first of all, no hatred towards any being. That is the reason Lord Krishna doesn't say, Bhagavanu Vacha, he doesn't say that you should love everybody. Because as soon as he says, love everybody, you all will give me a big list of all those people and all those animals you love. That deer is so cute, that antelope is so cute, the rabbit is so cute, all the details and the human beings you will give me a list. It doesn't matter how many people you love. Do you hate anyone? One person. Yes, then you are not a bhakta. No hatred towards any being. That's where I keep on saying that. One quotation which I love of Huxley, is, let us be kinder to one another. Just an allowance for the other person to function. This is what Lord Krishna says. So, adveshta sarvam, no hatred towards any being. Just trying to do good in any way you can. See, because now you don't want anything from the world. When you reach a state of bhakta, you don't want anything from the world. So what you do, your attitude will be, what can I do for you? There's this beautiful poem called Abu Ben Adam. In that poem, you go through the YouTube, you'll get it. Abu Ben Adam. He is sleeping, deep, peaceful sleep. And there in the dream, he sees a vision, an angel. And that angel is writing a fat book, writing something. So Abu Ben Adam goes to her and says, excuse me, what are you writing? So she says, I'm writing of all the names of people who love God. So he says, write my name also. And she writes and vanishes. And says, but you don't love God. So he says, write my name as I am a person who loves the fellow men, people around, not necessarily God, but people around. So she marks the PS, right in the letter last asterisk. There is this person called Abu Ben Adam. He loves his fellow men, and other people are all loving God. And next night, again the angel came in an awakening light, and she opened the book and she showed Abu Ben Adam. Abu Ben Adam's name led all the rest. The God had written, who all are good to me, and he had put Abu Ben Adam's name right at top. Jana Seva is equal to Janardana Seva. You want to do namaskara to a statue, a stone statue, but you are ignoring the living gods. This is not bhakti. This can never be bhakti. The idea what we said that we want to see in stone models God, whether it is Rama or Krishna or Shiva or Mother Ganga, all this reference is only to see that even in water, a simple river, I can see Mother. Even in a simple statue, I can see God. तो फिर बाकी के लोगों का क्या कहना? What is to say about others? Everywhere I see divinity splashed. It is there everywhere. So since I am seeing divinity everywhere amongst people, poor, rich, whatever be the caste, I am seeing God everywhere to such a level that even what is stone to others, I can see God there. That is the reference of statues. So there is no use of bowing to a statue and not having reference to living people. It's the other way. So bhakti is this. Have reverence to everybody. It's a mad divinity splash. Everything is happening so beautifully. You, in every experience of life, right or wrong, you see divinity. You see divinity splashed everywhere. When you see that, you are just happy. In a rose petal, you are happy. You are seeing happiness everywhere. A child laughing and crying, you are happy. People running around you, you are just happy seeing that divinity. That attitude is bhakti. What can I see in others good, which can make me a more happier person? There's this beautiful story of Kannappa. This man was a hunter, and he used to hunt, but he was a great Shiva Bhakta. So once when he was hunting, he went deep inside a jungle, and there he saw a broken down temple, completely broken down, with just a shivling in between. And it was so bad, dirty, maintained, very badly maintained. Nobody was there. So he immediately took some leaves and started sweeping the whole area around the shivling. When sweeping the whole area is there, then he said, okay, now I'll go and get something, because for the Lord, he must be hungry, he must be thirsty. I'll just go. He went inside. Then said, first I have to take some flowers because I need to do some puja. So he just saw some wild flowers. So he took those wild flowers in his hand and walked ahead. Then he said, the Lord must be hungry. So he said, now what do I do? Because he killed, being a hunter, he killed a wild boar and he took the food of the wild boar, the mutton of it, and he walked towards that. As he was walking in hand, he said, now flowers are in my hand, but I need to carry this with both my hands. So what should I do? So he kept that food aside. He took the flowers and put it on his own head. There was a band like that. So he put the flowers on his own head, and then he took that item, food item, and he said, now I have to wash the Lord also. So he went to a river. Now how do we carry the water? So he carried it in his mouth. So this was the way Kannappa came. Mouth full of water, in the hand the wild boar's flesh, and head full of flowers. As soon as he comes to the shivling, he spits the whole water on the shivling to cleanse it. And then he puts that whole thing, food item, before the Lord for him to eat, shivlinga. And then he removed the flowers and put it there. And then he walked away. Next day morning, a pujari saw that. And the pujari said, the shivling is a little bit clean, but what mess is here? Non-vegetarian food, meat is there, and he removed, a typical Brahmin. So he removed the whole thing, cleaned the whole thing, put some fresh fruits there around. He prayed to the Lord, did some proper chanting, and then went. This went on. Night, Kannappa would come. He would see the whole thing as a mess. He will remove all that thing. He will go get some wildflowers, water, and something to eat. Being a hunter, I told you, always non-vegetarian, putting there. And evening, this pujari will come, clean the whole place, put some fresh flowers. This was going on. Lord Shiva and Parvati were sitting on top. Usually they are always on top. So they look up. Parvati is asking, both of them are praying to you. Who is the dearer one? Even gods want to know. They want to compare. So who's the dearer one? And he said, let's have a test. He says, okay. One day, night, morning, early morning, the Brahmin is coming. As the Brahmin comes and he does all the puja, and after the puja, he opens his eyes. He sees the Shivlinga has two eyes by the side drawn, and one of the eye is bleeding. The Brahmin gets frightened and said, there is something wrong with this, some Kala Jadoo and all, and I don't want to get into this. How can a stone bleed? And he runs away. Kannappa comes in the evening and he sees the same vision. And Kannappa says, oh my Lord, your eyes are bleeding. What should I do? What should I do? And then he took some green lap, Ayurvedic stuff, from the leaves he crushed, and he put it on the eye. But the blood would not stop. The blood would continue. So he said, now what do I do? Then he said, okay. So he took an arrow from his quiver and he plucked his own eye. He plucked his own eye and put it there. And as soon as he put it there, the bleeding stopped. And he was happy. He said, thank God, my Lord is all right now. He is happy and his eye is bleeding. Another eye on the shivling started bleeding. Now Kannappa was in a fix. Fix was not what should I do. He knows what should I do. I will give my other eye. There was no doubt there. The doubt was, if I pluck my eye, how will I find out where to put it? Because both eyes are needed. Both hands are needed to pluck it. So he comes up with a decision. And there is a photograph of a shivling with the eye bleeding, one eye correct, one eye bleeding. And that eye which is bleeding, Kannappa puts his toe on that particular eye to mark. And then he's standing up and he's ready to pluck the other eye. As soon as that happens, Lord Shiva comes before him and says, enough of your sacrifice. This kind of a sacrifice being seen everywhere. Everywhere. You see it, provided you want to see it. If you don't want to see it, if we are selfish by nature, we will see only the wrong things happening in the world. When the Taj Mahal, the Taj Hotel was under fire, And there was this person. His family was staying in 6th floor. Kant, I forgot his name. Kant, K-A-N-T. His family was staying, he was a general manager there. His family was staying in 6th floor, wife and children. And he, at that time, the terrorists came and he decided that he should help them. But by the time they were there on the 6th floor, the 6th floor was already burnt. He helped others to get out of the hotel first. And he called his father from there, that this is what is happening. His wife and children are stuck there and I don't know what to do. And the father gave him a commitment saying, you do your work, see to it that all the guests are safe. And that person, Karamveer, I think so, Karamveer Khan, he said, he told his father, I will be the last person to leave this building. I will see to it that everybody goes. Now, these kind of sacrifices, whether it's a normal person wearing a suited booted job, or you see a Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, Sukhdev, people have given their life, sacrificed for a higher cause. Anything, they have given up their, only a human being can do this. That's what I thought. But then I saw a lot of animal documentaries where animals are also doing that. Maybe they have learned or we have learned from them. I don't know. Animals, just the thought of how can I be of some help to any level. This is bhakti. And you see that divinity. Why am I helping? Not because they need help. I'm helping because I have to do it. I see God everywhere. Kan kan me Ram, shan shan me Ram. Chanchal mana nita Ram japakar, pal pal chinna chinna, ghadi ghadi nis din Ram. Everywhere I see only God. And God doesn't come under demarcations. This is this caste, this is this religion, this, it doesn't come under that. Once Adi Shankaracharya was walking. As he was walking, a complete Chandala. Chandala means a person who is so poor, who eats dog meat to survive. Literally, that's the definition. He came before Adi Shankaracharya. And by the time Adi Shankaracharya had studied all the granthas and scriptures, so as soon as this person came before him, completely dirty right before, that Brahmin quality came in Shankara. And he looked at that person and said, Hanta, Hanta, get away. Because when a Brahmin walks, other people, other lower caste people should not walk. So was the case. So he immediately said, Hanta, Hanta. And that person, the Chandala, asked Shankaracharya, whom are you supposed to tell to move away? Who's supposed to move away? Are you telling me, the physical body, to move away? Because the physical body is going to die anyway. It is so temporary. It doesn't matter. Are you telling the Atman in me to move away, which is everywhere? Whom are you telling to move away? Immediately, Adi Shankaracharya realized that this guy is not a normal person. He fell at his feet. And the story is he becomes Shiva. He fell at his feet and wrote a beautiful text called Manisha Pushpakam. 15 verses of that. He just wrote about where divinity is. It's everywhere. Saundarya Lahiri by Hanuman. Divinity everywhere. As soon as you go to malls, you go to the street and you see the beauty of everything. Beauty of a tree moving in the breeze. Every aspect of life, it becomes a gift. The problem with bhakti, with seeing divinity is, these eyes can't be bestowed on you. Like a teacher used to say, I can give you the method and teachings of how to become a right person and to do the right action correctly. But I cannot teach you how to live an inspired life. Right action doing so that other people need to see what I am doing is still based on the word. And inspired action is you do something, you write something, you speak, whatever you do because you love it. There is no external pressure on you to act in any other way other than the way you are. true bhakti. So you are cooking, you do it beautifully. You are washing, you do it beautifully. Every aspect. One person asked a Mahatma, "Sir, I heard that you have realized yourself." The Mahatma said, "I don't know. So people say." What you used to do before realization? Before realization, I used to get out of my bed, go to the woods, cut some trees, get some branches there, and put it and cook, eat, go for work, and then sleep. This is what you used to do before realization. After realization, what do you do? I get up in the morning, go out, cut some wood, get back, bring the wood, put it in the fire, eat something, go to work, and then come to sleep. There is no difference at all. Before evolution and after evolution, there are no differences. Sorry, did I say no difference? Only one difference. You will not be affected. There is a beautiful story. I'll end with this story. The story is a beggar, actually a king and queen were there, and they were living peacefully. A huge deluge came of water and everything was destroyed. Their young son, prince, disappeared somewhere. They did not know where. 10 years, 20 years spent, they could not find. After 20 years, things were different. Minister was that, the king and queen died away. And there's some beggars were there on the street near the temple begging. So one of the guys was begging regularly. Some people came, flower people, they gave him something. The other people shooed him away. And he was very, very sad. His whole life was just begging. And all the beggars were caught by this royalty department to punish them. Suddenly one minister, old minister, called that beggar and said, "Show me your hand." He saw the hand, so there was a typical mark. And he realized that that mark was the mark of a prince. They had put the mark there. At that time, tattoo was there. So that mark was there. Immediately said that, "Oh my God, we found the prince." The beggar had no idea what it was. So they put him, adorned him with good perfumes, clothes, and put him there as a king. And as a king, he ruled for 1 year. But sometimes you miss being your old self. It always happens. Wherever you are, you miss being the old self. So he was missing begging. After 1 year of having riches and good food and jewelry and everything, he was missing that begging. So one day he decided that I'm going to beg. So night, evening, he didn't tell anybody. He went to his room. He took out all the clothes of the kingly jewels and put out his old rags. He put that out and went to the same place where he used to beg. Some people were surprised looking at him after a long time. They gave him. Some people shooed him away. Some people didn't even look at him. And he was there for 4-5 hours begging. And after begging, he got around 15 to 20 rupees. Previously, he was begging. Those 15 rupees which he got would make him happy, really happy, or very sad that the collection was less. Now when he is having that 15 rupees, there is nothing. There is no happiness. There is no sadness. He's just happy that this experience happened. This attitude will come when you are spiritual and the bhakti is there. You see divinity, the affectation starts and inspiration begins. Every activity of your life will be an inspired life. You will never be bored ever in life. You will always be self-motivated to do things because time is at a premium. What to do with this inspired activities and how it moves ahead, we'll see in the next session of part 3, where we'll be talking about Jnana Yoga. Thank you very much. Oh.